Hello, this is Debbie Lynn Toomey, Tufts Medical Center's Injury Prevention Professional Coordinator, and you are watching Aging Strong, which is sponsored by the Quincy Health Department. And today we have a guest speaker, and he's been with us before. His name is Mark Friedman, and he is with Senior Helpers. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you know what? I'm excited to learn more about your topic today, aging in place, because as you and I were talking before we came on, I was telling you that, it's something that I personally know a lot about, having aging parents. So, please share what you have with us.
Okay, I will. Let me get my screen share up.
Yeah.
And all right, there we go. All right. All right. So let me back up a page. It is nice to be here. A little bit about us and our address locations. But let's jump into the topic because I think that's the most important thing we're here to discuss. My experience of the last 15 years of being in elder care and before that being active in my community is that people make decisions about their plan for aging in the midst of a crisis. It could be a medical event, it could be a fall or other event, or a death of a partner. That's a shame because there's so much opportunity to get ahead of the curve and plan. And one of the things that we've noticed is increasingly this decisions in a crisis is becoming more prevalent, as well as the crises are of greater magnitude. So a little while ago, probably about a year ago, we started working on a series of content that's really designed about helping people get ahead of the curve. And the goal of that is so that people can have a basis of information before they have to start making decisions. And we created a few different things. Several years ago, we came out with our book on aging, which was just a general guide. We dealt with a major crisis people have, and that is returning home from a hospital or a rehab stay. But in this past year, we've created our Aging Advantage Guide. And this is really about getting a plan in place before something happens. And the first topic is really about exploring today's topic, aging in place. What is it and how to get started on developing a plan? So when you ask people what their aging plan is, most people respond with a fairly firm, determined voice. No, I'm not moving anywhere. I'm going to stay in my home. Others respond, well, if something happens to one of us, then the other will probably move in, either with a near a son or daughter. And we know from research that 87% of seniors want to age in place and in their home. But also we know that 70% of seniors will need some form of assistance in the future. But more importantly, when you ask if they've written down a detailed plan, they usually reference their will and their estates. And the net of that is people are more prepared for what happens after they pass than while they're still here. And that's a shame. So we want to help people get ahead of that. So it's far more than a will or estate plan. The challenge is it means different things to different people, and it's complex both emotionally and rationally. And it's complex because it involves a lot of difficult conversations with yourself, with your partner, or your broader circle of care. So a good place to start is understanding, what does aging in place mean? Well, the CDC defines it: the ability to live in one's home and community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. It involves creating a supportive environment that allows older adults to maintain their autonomy, safety, and their quality of life as they age. And the goal of it is to enable us to age on our own terms, in familiar surroundings, with a sense of belonging, connection, with independence and security. Hopefully that rings true for most people. But the big question is, people understand that at 100,000 feet, at 50,000 feet, but they don't get down to the details where it makes it possible for those around them to help them achieve it, and those that are involved to understand those details so they know what kind of decisions might need to be made. So here are 10 questions that I'd like each person to consider. The first is, what does aging in place mean for you? And that's a conversation usually among people. It's for the individual and usually the primary caregiver too. There needs to be a deep understanding. And that deep understanding comes from a clear articulation of both wants and needs, current and what you anticipate in the future. You can then look at it and say, hey, am I a good candidate for aging in this place that I've decided I want? It's a basis for you to start to look forward and say, well, what's my current situation and what could I likely expect? And I don't mean worst case planning, but most likely planning. You need to look at if current support is needed and how it might evolve. Who's involved in your care? I call that the circle of care. Could be family, friends, professional caregiver, congregational communities. Are there economic considerations that you want to take into consideration? How will you stay healthy and independent? Concerns like hearing, eyesight, and mobility. How do you expect changes in health or evolving needs to be managed? And most importantly, where can you turn to for advice, and what type of advice is each type of person capable of giving you? Especially in the event you have a situation you're not well versed in. This involves homework, deep homework. You've got to define your priorities. These are your personal objectives, your physical health status, your cognitive health status, your current and projected level of independence for activities of daily living, ADLs. These are points of hands-on care, bathing, grooming, continence assistance. Current and projected level of independence for IADLs. These are instrumental activities of daily living, such as errands and transportation, getting your medications, keeping your house clean, being able to prepare meals and keep that home environment safe and sanitary. Being able to look at your home with an eye toward the future to understand, will it work the way it is, or do changes need to be made so that I can age here? A clear understanding of the financial picture, and that involves doing projections forward of what expenses might be. And very importantly, a task that's often skipped is who is in your circle of care and what are their roles and limitations? And most importantly, discussing their role with them. Before I go any further, let me stop and ask if there are any questions so far. Does this ring true?
It's, you're bringing up a lot of great points, and boy, it's just each line really deserves a lot of thought. And I can't help but wonder, at what point, at what age do you suggest people start thinking about this? The slide before you had, you asked, what is aging in place? Who do you have in your circle? These are very, I would say, very deep, deep questions. And, and I totally understand how important they are, and they do make sense. But at what age do you suggest that people start playing with these ideas?
Well, it's interesting. Most people start thinking about their retirement in their mid-60s, right? And that's just, we've conditioned to do that because it's 65, that Social Security age, in there. There's nothing wrong with at least starting to think about your future at that point in more than financial terms, right? More than geography terms, potentially. But start having open and honest conversations about it. Right? Because there's a high probability this is going to be a multi-generational challenge. I can tell you with my own parents, who are a major source of the drive I have in my career in elder care, of helping them live their best life, their fullest life. We started too late. We started in their early 80s. They're in the very end of their 80s now. And as a result, there were a lot of things going on that we could have been better prepared for in that process. We may have gotten to the same point, but there would have been a lot less pain involved. And I mean I don't mean emotional pain, not physical pain, in getting there. It wouldn't have been, sudden decisions. We would have had time to think and plan about all the different pieces, clarity of roles, understanding what was most important to them. And we could do it outside of the things that naturally happen in one's 80s. So, the sooner the better. But I would say, at minimum in your 70s, start this process. And if something's going on physically or cognitively, start sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. It's just sometimes people run up against one of the partners being afraid of aging and not really thinking about the future, or just kind of becoming more depressed because they're getting older, not able to do what they want to do and still want to be able to stay in their location, their place. And then the other one is more, proactive. So it's really, I love the questions, the different talking points, because it really gets the conversation going, not just between the couple, but also the extended, circle of care that you mentioned. It could be family, it could be children, it could be nieces and nephews, neighbors, friends, you just never know, or siblings.
I think that's a critical piece. Nobody wants to be, and I apologize in advance. The term is burden. It's burden of care is the term that's used. Nobody wants to be a burden on others. But at the same time, when things are happening, you're least likely to understand that the burden of care could be very high if you're the recipient. Or the anguish of being a high burden on somebody makes the whole situation more complicated, and it could have been prevented in many cases. So, start earlier, ask the hard questions. One of the guides that we talk to, and hopefully I'll have a chance to share with you in the future, is managing those difficult conversations. And they're very complicated, but don't start there. Don't start there. Let me give you an easy starting point, right? And it's not easy, but it's the easiest place to start. To your point, when do you start? Well, it's an iterative process. So the sooner the better. There's nothing wrong with changing it. This is one of those exercises that's, quote, done in pencil and modified as you go. But the big questions to start with, because they're going to frame and color everything that comes after, is a clarity of what matters most to you as you age. For example, and I'll give more examples again in a minute, how does geography play a role? What's most important? Family, friends, healthcare access, climate, lifestyle. What quality of life do you want to maintain? And by quality of life, I mean level of engagement, level of activities. How do you want to spend your day, and how do you prioritize activities to make it meaningful? I'm going to stay in my house, yet all I can do is stare out the window. Is not, in my view, a high quality, right? What level of independence? Will you depend on yourself or others? And how do you want decisions to be made about that? If you're asking somebody to help you, do they have a say in how it's done, or do you just want it your way? And how flexible will you be? What are some of the other important factors to you? Again, this is about defining your want. And by making it start with that point of what do I want, then you start to understand what you're making trade-offs against. So it leads us to the second question of how are your wants impacted by other factors? And not just impacted, but how do those things that could impact it affect your prioritization of your wants? Things like cognition changes, economics, medical conditions, personal safety, or the burden of care on others. Because once you define those things, you can start to say, all right, I'm willing to make trade-offs, but this is how I want trade-offs made. This is a higher priority than that. And unless you have those conversations and start to articulate those things, the chances are the people that are trying to help you achieve your objectives won't have the information to help you make good decisions. So by starting with these three questions, literally writing them down, you are helping everything that comes next have a guidebook. It may not have all the details, but it has enough insight that you can at least be moving in the right direction. So these are the types of things that we hear in terms of example wants and needs when we're going through this with our clients, or we have conversations about it with our clients. First, in wants, Independence. This is a high want item. The ability to perform my daily activities with minimal assistance. Family connection. Regular visits and communication with families and friends. My quality of life engagement, whether it's for hobbies, interests, or other things that bring joy. Convenience. Can I get my groceries, my house cleaned? What can I do to ease my daily task as things get more difficult? Comfort and security. Do I have a safe and comfortable living environment? I hear people say that's really important to them, yet we're called into service because of a history of falls that's of staggering frequency. The level of cognitive engagement, the opportunity for mental stimulation through classes, puzzles, or social activities. We saw the effect of a lack of cognitive engagement during COVID and how detrimental it can be. And then adventure, opportunities for travel or day trips to explore new places or favorite spots. Those are example wants that we're talking about when we say, what do you want? What's important to you? And then there's those needs, right? Healthcare access, regular, with the right degree of frequency for checkups, medication, or chronic conditions. Mobility assistance, help with walking. Do I need a durable medical equipment, such as a cane or a walker or other modifications to the home for safety? Basic nutrition. Can I get food? Can I get healthy meals or assistance with meal preparation? Physical activity. Can I stay fit so that I can have that want of independence that I desire? My personal care. If I'm having difficulty myself, can I get the support I need to be able to do that? Social engagement. You see, that's on both sides. We need it, but usually we also want it. Transportation, the ability to get places, not just places you enjoy, but also critical needs such as groceries or prescriptions. And mental health support if needed, counseling or support groups, or even general companionship. These are the types of things that you're having to balance. I want this and I need this. And the issue next is, well, how do I bring those two things together? Because we all know what I want and what I need aren't always in alignment. So that understanding of priorities and trade-offs of the wants will enable you to accommodate your needs, especially as your needs change. It's most important to understand not only the list of wants, but also those priorities and trade-offs to make sure that the needs can be met the way you want them to be met. I apologize if I'm getting passionate about this.
You really are. And and as you're talking, the list of needs is a little bit longer than the needs of wants. I don't know if it's just, that's how you kind of did it purposefully, but I can imagine as a person gets older, their needs list is going to get longer and longer. It might be they need more medications, they need more financial support to afford the medication. They might need, all these X, Y, and Z's, depending on their comorbidities, the medical conditions.
And not only the medical condition, their physical condition, the shrinkage of their friend group as they age. I mean, all of those things can impact it. Our wants change and our needs will change, right? So and I'll close on this point, but I'll say it now. You've got to revisit this. This is not a one-time exercise. You need to keep it current, right? Because your needs will evolve and your wants may change as your needs evolve. But you want to keep that balance and you want to always drive it from the perspective of your needs. Mm-hmm. And what I want to make sure doesn't happen is that people are so overwhelmed, they're afraid to get started, right? That's not the objective. The head in the sand approach is not a strategy. Things are going to change. So the whole idea of those three questions was put a stake in the ground. It can evolve. If you're half correct, great. You can get better as you modify it over time. But you can also do things to buy time. If you've started this a little bit late and things are already starting to happen. Let me give you an example. Home modifications and smart home upgrades can buy you time. We know one of the major things that leads to a change in status is falls or other safety events that happen in the home. So small home modifications can make a major impact on success, and they can buy you a timeline so you can get more detailed planning done. Things like grab bars or walk-in showers or tubs or stair lifts or shower chairs or benches so that you don't modify your shower or tub. Lift chairs, ramps, things that make access and egress easier or mobility within the home easier. There's also smart home upgrades. These are things that may add safety, but they may also add convenience. I know when I first get up in the morning, I take a minute before I immediately stand up out of bed. That desire just to jump up like I did in my 30s or 40s or 50s, I need to curb that to make sure that I'm on good footing, right? So things like, well, gee, who's at the door before I rush to it? Video doorbells. There's AI-based monitoring, smart technology, whether it's based on sound or movement or temperature, so that other people know everything is going well, or that there's some sort of check-in process. Security cameras, smart thermostats, so that temperature is controlled based on your needs and your different needs over the course of the day. And you're not getting up in the middle of the night to, one, find the thermostat and then two, adjust it. You can have app-controlled light switches. I put these throughout my house. So in the middle of the night, if I realize I left a light on, I can pick up my phone and turn it off, as opposed to going down a flight of stairs, up another flight of stairs to check on it. There's also things like smart stoves and oven, where, gee, did I turn the oven off? I can't tell you how many times I've walked upstairs after making a nice dinner wondering, did I turn the oven off? Well, I can look on my phone and I can turn it off if I left it on, or I can check. These types of investments are good investments by themselves, but they're great for safety intervention and convenience, and they give you a bit of a runway to make sure nothing untoward happens while you're doing more detailed planning. Another thing that we work with a lot of clients on, they use our services as a short-term support while they're deciding, do they need to make other more substantial changes? That could be for recovery care while you're regaining strength. I've fallen, I broke my hip and I have to get it, fixed. It doesn't mean you need to move, but you may need support for a period of time while you get back to your norm, whatever that new norm is, and you can use it so you have time to make a decision based on your ongoing need, not just the need at the immediate. Support while you're undergoing medical treatment. Pure fall recovery, right? I need some extra support just while I'm rebuilding strength because I injured myself, or post-surgery support. We also provide ongoing support for progressive conditions such as dementia, Parkinson's, or ALS. Those things don't mean a requirement to move. They don't have to impact your ability to age on place in terms of the location or the geography, but it may require extra support, but that's well within reach. Other mobility limitations, stairs, right? Difficulty getting, up and down stairs, or other chronic conditions that might transpire.
Mark, quick question. The short-term needs.
Let me stop here. Yeah.
Yeah, is that similar to like a visiting nurse, recovery care while you regain strength? Is it like a visiting nurse, PT, OT, or is that different?
That's a great question. And that's where the difference between home care and home health really fall into play, right? Home health is that, it's usually covered under insurance. You're part, from an event. That's your physical therapy, occupational therapy, or wound care, or something like that. Those are going to be maybe 6 to 7 hours worth of visits a week, and they're defined clinical intervention. That's not support for, getting to the grocery store, or helping you get up in the morning, or, get bathed, or get meal prepared, or things like that. So it may involve both on the short-term basis, but the short-term needs that I was talking to were more along the lines of personal care for ADLs and IADLs.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Good to know.
But the point is, not every decision is a permanent decision. You have the ability to change your mind, and you can take, interim steps to prolong the timeline. You can also take short-term steps while you think through things at a deeper level. And that's what I encourage people to do. Think through things at a deeper level. Try not to make big decisions in a crisis if you can avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
So the net of this is an aging plan. And what you're trying to do is two things. The first of which is to ensure your future involves on your terms. The second is to be ahead of a crisis so that if something happens, it's managed the way you want. And if you do these things, you'll be able to have a constructive conversation with the other people that are involved, your circle of care. Because you're going to need to discuss that plan and your thinking and intent with these people. So one, they understand your thinking, and two, so they know your role, their role in your success. And lastly, just like you review, at different points over the course of your career and project when you can retire or those types of things, you've got to review your plan regularly so it stays current. And you have to keep it current. Keep it in writing, keep that discussion going, and make sure that you can get those things accomplished. I guess, I didn't want to overwhelm anybody with information. I wanted to keep it digestible. But each week we have a 1-minute video, which really breaks down one of these topics in some level of detail. Folks can access it on Facebook, on Instagram. Professionals can access it on LinkedIn or via our website. And our point is exactly what I said in the very beginning. What we want to do is share what we've learned and help people avoid mistakes we've seen people make so that you can be an educated ager and as a result be a successful ager.
I love that. Educated ager. Very nice. Very, very nice. So you covered so much.
And I'm sorry if it felt like drinking from a fire hose, because I really tried to limit it.
No, it's beautiful and really lends itself to multiple hours of conversation and reflection, not just on the family, but the actual person aging. I mean, we're all aging, right? Sandwich generation, here I am. And so, I think about my parents, just, I kept nodding, at some of the bullet points you were talking about. Like yourself, we started late in the game. I mean, 80s. In the 80s, when my parents were in their 80s, that's when we started addressing, what are we going to do? Do you want to stay here? And as, we are immigrants from a different country. And so, you make a life for yourself here in this country. You become a citizen, and then you create like a legacy. That's something that you want to hand down. And so, everything that's been hard earned is something that they want to hold on to, something to. And it doesn't have to be just immigrants. Anybody who, has worked hard all their lives to buy a house or to buy a car, all these like really important things, to be able to have something to show for their, hard-earned years of work. It's hard for some of people to think about, okay, I've been in this house for about 60 years, you're asking me to move, and I've heard, a long time ago, the home that you bought when you were a young family, 20s, 30s, can be almost like a death trap when you're in your 80s because of all the stairs, going basement and the attic and all these stuff that you don't even think about when you become older.
Yeah. I'll share a personal story. So 2019 through 24, it's been very hard for my parents. They're 89 years old. Last year was particularly challenging. In 19, my father broke his hip. Then 6 weeks later, broke his other hip. Went from playing golf 3 or 4 times a week, or at least talking about golf 3 or 4 times a week and playing almost that much, to using a walker, a cane, and then, over the years flowed to a walker. And, they have a great relationship, and they were able to support each other. 5 stairs going in and out of the house, right? Fast forward to 2024, my dad has a medical complication. There's surgery involved. And the things that my mom could do when he broke his hip were much more difficult now, right? The difference between 84 and 88 is very different, is a lot, right? 5 steps to get in and out of the house. Father recovers from his surgery beautifully. They're doing great, and they're 650 miles away. I mentioned that on the last piece. My mom's walking down the stairs from the house into the garage, falls and breaks her wrist in there. My dad's less able to do things. I mean, think about trying to use a walker and just carry plates from one side of the kitchen to the other. It's difficult, in there. I was down there 8 weeks last year. My sister was down repeatedly. My brother was down, and it was clear that, to your point, that the house aging in place no longer meant the house, but it needed to be a place that they felt good about and they were comfortable in and had what they were looking for. So it started a conversation. Oh, well, my sister happens to live in Boston area. I live in Boston. Well, it kind of makes sense to be where we are. She's very involved with their medical and I'm very involved in everything else. So we said, well, there's 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartments. That's easy. We've got elevators, 1-floor living. You'll bring a car. So then that idea of quality of life started to come into the conversation. They're not from here. They don't know people here. So, the idea of an independent living community that had a vibrant, active life of people like them, demographically like them, religiously similar to them, interests similar to them was very important. So we made that set of decisions and processes, and they found a place, which they moved 2 weeks ago. But the process of making that decision and going from a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom, 3,800 plus or minus square foot house on a golf course with a nice deck with wonderful flower beds that my mom planted every year, and all the stuff that they had in that house. That was their third house of their whole life. They've been there 30 years. What's complicated? What do they take? They're going to 1,050 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, setting one of the bedrooms up as a den. What fits? What can they take? What do they want to take? What are the trade-offs? My mom probably had 200 pictures framed around the house, right? She had artwork all over the walls, right? What's going to fit? There are only so many walls in a space that big. So so we had to look at alternatives and going through that process. And a lot of it was what they want versus what they need. There were 2 pieces of furniture, one that my dad wanted, one that my mom wanted, that really served no function, yet they had 2 others that neither one of them were cold at, but not the priority, but had great function. Going over that to, Mom, we can make albums out of these other pictures. And then figuring out what we're doing with all the rest of the stuff. Because like you said, I built this is my legacy, and realizing, gee, the dining room set that you've had for 50 years, nobody really wants. It's not that it was bad. We have great memories around it. The memories are what's special. But that whole process of reconciliation and grieving and change, it's an emotional roller coaster and it's a rational roller coaster.
Yeah.
And watching them go through that was, thank goodness we'd had detailed conversations, because it enabled myself and my siblings to have tactful, respectful conversations about those points, as opposed to you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We understood their priorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really it can be an overwhelming time, both for the aging couple or the aging person and also their circle of support. Because the circle of support has they're working, they have their own family, maybe time constraint. It could be, all these different things, and they want things done. And then the older adult could be, they're still processing, oh my gosh, we have to move. And so it can be very overwhelming. And so, it's just one of those things that's it might take some time for some people. Other people, they might be, some older adults are like preparing. They're just like starting to give away all their stuff, knowing that, what, I don't want to burden my kids with all my stuff because, I love them that much. So It's just like the different spectrum.
my wife and I have a storage area in our basement, and we moved into the house, and we had a 6 month delay between houses. So it came out of storage into the house. Oh, put it in the storage area. Put it in the storage area. Put it in the storage area. It's stacked floor to ceiling. It's the old coal chute of our house. And I told my wife that, this summer we got to take everything out of that and go through it. We don't even know what's in there. And, and then we keep adding things to the front of it. So now it's completely full. It's like, we got to go through this because I just did this and I don't want to do this in 20 years or 30 years. I want to do it now.
Yeah.
So a lot of things are an ongoing piece, and being honest with yourself about it. And then, one of the things that's really helped, with this journey with my parents that I've learned so much from. I mean, I kid them. I'm happy to do it, Mom and Dad. You taught me how to use a spoon, right? So let me help now. Is my sister, my brother, and I knew our roles in the circle, who was responsible for what. That also enabled us to respect the role that each other was playing in the process, as well as the professionals we were interacting with to help my parents achieve what they wanted. Arguments between siblings are not usually pretty.
Yeah.
We were able to avoid them.
Yeah, I keep shaking my head because, I could relate. I can relate so much. I have 3 sisters. So we basically use our strengths and our ability to kind of, one is very good with numbers. So she, takes care of the finances and also the bills. And, just make sure everything's in check. And the other one's, she's an NP, DPN, DNP. So she's very much of the, so we kind of played up our strengths. So that way, not one person, had to, assume so many roles, which could be very, overwhelming and create a burnout situation for that particular person. But it does help when all the siblings are able to kind of be on the same team and know what their roles are.
But, absolutely. But one of the things that enabled us to do that were the conversations with my parents, because our roles were defined based on their wants and needs, not our well-intentioned desire for them to have what we thought was right. It was about our uniting in our ability to help them achieve what they wanted and respect.
Yeah.
It's huge. It was huge.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. And it was traumatic for my folks. I mean, they lived within 25 miles of where they grew up. This was not a small move.
Yeah.
So,
there certainly is. Grieving is just like part of that whole, it's the elephant in the room, basically, that nobody's really, does not really talk about too much. So I was glad when you kind of said that there's grieving involved, because there's a lot of losses there. Yeah.
And this is the first step. Get those 3 questions answered. Think about the other stuff. Do your homework. It's the first step. The second step is really understanding about caregiving. What does it mean? And you have to understand caregiving for both perspectives, the recipient and the giver, right? Very critical for everybody to understand both sides of that. The third step is really understanding those difficult conversations, articulating those trade-offs, the financial, the legal, the property, the decision-making, medical proxies, all those types of things and the trade-offs that are involved in there. Those are complicated conversations, rationally all by themselves, but then you add the emotion of what they represent, right? The fourth piece is really understanding the journey. How are things likely going to unfold? What are the things I need to be prepared for? And the last piece is, how do you pull it all together into a well-articulated plan so that those in the circle of care can truly execute and balance your wants and needs over time?
Yeah.
So we tried to break it up in pieces or steps, I should say, that really make sense for folks. And we're not the professional in all of them. We've tried to articulate the issues, and each one of these steps involves certain worksheets, if you will, like the one I showed on the picture of the 3 questions. Some just are check boxes, some are lists, some are things to be prepared for, really understanding, for example, what are options out there? Okay, if home doesn't work for me, what are my options? And what do they mean? And operationally as well as financially, to understand those things. By breaking it down into those steps, we think we can help somebody lead themselves through the process and then pull in the expertise where it's needed and where the expertise applies, as opposed to well-intentioned, but kind of tangential.
Geez, in a way, it feels like older adults need to go to school to learn how to navigate aging. It's just, there's so much there with, Medicare, Social Security, finances, health, and, medications, and then safety. And, there's so many factors out there that older adults need to deal with or learn about so that they don't become victims of fraud or just being of loneliness or being homeless or all these different sad stories that people would kind of hear in the news. So I love how you're saying that's good to start the conversation as early as possible, so that it becomes almost like a norm, so that once you start talking about the future, you start kind of, imagining what it would be like. It's nothing that was just like dropped down on somebody and say, okay, here we go. It's time. You're 80. You're going to stay, you're going to go. What do you want? It's not.
Here's how the classic conversation went, right? You go to your parents' house and they take you to a bookshelf and they pull out this folding binder that their insurance broker gave them in the 1950s and say, here's where all the papers are. Now you know what you need to know. And I can't tell you how many of my friends that are going through the same thing that we've gone through say, yeah, that was exactly the conversation I had with my parents. Where's the notebook? And you look at the notebook and it's, okay, maybe it has some insurance policies. Maybe it has their birth certificates, their marriage certificates, probably has, their passports in it, their will and their estate plan. It's like, great. I know what to do if there's nothing left for me to do for you. I'm trying to cover the gap between then and now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to do that the best way I can.
Yeah. 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 Very good point. And I love how you said that, a lot of us know what to do after the person has passed because of the will or the trust. But what do you do before then? And how can you support them so that they have quality of life?
Right.
A happy life.
Exactly. A full life. A full life.
Yeah.
That last chapter should be its best.
Yeah. Yeah. On their own terms and just, making sure that, their needs are met, their wants are, given to them, relatively speaking, because a lot of people, they want to be young again. We can't give that to you, right?
So do I.
Everybody does. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I love the questions, but what if you don't have anybody to prompt you to ask these questions and you don't have anybody in your corner to help you age in place?
There are great resources available to do this. You can always do it for yourself. So we've worked with organizations like Honoring Choices, usually accessible to your Council on Aging, that'll talk about living wills and directives and those types of things, which is how you want decisions made and what sort of documentation you might need. That's a very simple starting point. But the first starting point is the conversation in the mirror or with your partner. And that's, what do I want? And what are my priorities? And what trade-offs am I willing to make? They're detailed conversations and they're honest conversations with the person either that you most trust, yourself or your partner. And start there, because that will provide clue with what your next set of questions are, or the next type of professional you might want to meet with, whether it's a clergy member or a social worker or a financial planner or an elder law attorney. That will help you figure out your next step. There's a whole bunch of things that have to be done for it to be complete. It's never going to be perfect, and it's probably never going to be absolutely complete. That's okay.
Mhm.
But the more you have done, the better it will be for you.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I do a lot of my outreach work out in the senior centers, independent living, assisted livings, and I love going to the senior centers because they have so much resources there.
Right.
And I
Right.
just feel like it's underutilized. I feel like they could be busier. I mean, they are busy, but I just feel like more people, need to know where their local senior center is and know that they are welcome there. And that,
And
there's,
you can go to a different senior center too if they have something going on. They're always welcoming.
yeah, yeah. And you can go to one and also
Yeah.
go to another one because, different senior centers will offer different activities. So, it's just a very thriving community. And if you want to be around those type of people, you know, go to your senior center. It gives you a place to go to, and you will get to know about different information, different ideas that's going to help you age better. Yeah.
Right. Religious institutions often have senior groups. In the South, you have senior care ministries inside those large Southern congregations where they have basically a whole, like their own senior center for their congregation. So you never know where the resource may be coming from. In there that's of value and to help. The key is to make sure that the people you're getting advice from are qualified to give the advice you're asking for.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because well-intentioned advice doesn't necessarily mean good advice.
Yes,
Trust
yes,
and
yeah.
verify, right?
Mhm.
I'm not trying to raise alarms. I get my AARP newsletter every week, and I always joke that Henny Penny wrote it. The sky is always falling. There's always a crisis I'm trying to avoid. It doesn't have to feel that way.
Yeah.
And if you're ahead of the curve a little bit, you can seek out good advice as opposed to responding to crisis or alarm.
So do you suggest that, the questions, the talking points that you shared with us, do you think it's something that's good for people to start really thinking about when they turn 60 or when they're 65? I know the earlier the better,
Yeah.
but what do you think? What as far as like would 50 be too early for people to
I
start?
think on the life journey aspect, in your 40s, you have to start making so let's play it out. You have kids, you start thinking about life insurance and a house, right? Right? Your career is starting to placate, you're starting to interact with your parents, you realize maybe I should be thinking about these hybrid annuity life insurance products and things like that, so that the nest egg is there down in the future, because there's no such thing as a pension anymore for the most part. Right. And then you get in the middle of, many of us get in the middle of care for our parents. We're like, oh my, I didn't realize how big that task was. Maybe I need to organize things for myself, or we start to deal with things, our own health issues. Right. And so, all right, I need to get some things laid out or clarified, in writing, so that, I don't create the level of intervention that I'm working to support my parents. So you learn that in your 60s, often your late 50s to mid 60s, and then in your mid 60s, it's like, all right, I need to really go into the deep end of the pool as it relates to myself or as a couple of what we're doing. Right. I have peers now. I'm in my early 60s. We're all starting to have the conversation. Look, I love my home, but do I really need all this? Is this really the right answer? Right. We live in New England. It's a very expensive place to live. Does it make sense to have a huge portion of your net worth tied up in your home? or can I make that work better for me for my future? Because if you're in your 60s, you're probably going to make it to 100 or more. I'm not saying what that looks like physically or cognitively or anything else, but you're probably going to make it, right? So what's going to position you for that to be the best it can be along different paths that may develop? So yeah, I think in your 60s is a great time to start doing some real detail work and start getting things written and organized, and then keep things going, because then you're well ahead of the curve. And let's face it, things are going to change. There's going to be innovations. There's going to be changes in tax structures and possibly where you live, and medical advances and smart technology. So yeah, you're going to need to update it, but it still beats doing it in a crisis, right? Anything is better than decisions in a crisis.
Yeah, definitely. You don't ever want to get into that position. I mean, it's doable, but you need to be able to maximize your resources in the best way
Right.
possible. So you don't want to be making decisions in a crisis. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 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 Well, you know what, Mark? It's just, you've covered so much. And, what is the one thing that you want people to come away with from your presentation today?
The one thing I want people to think about from today is you can tackle this in bites. An old mentor of mine used to say, "How do you eat an elephant?" He'd ask the question. And the answer to the question is one bite at a time, right? And so, do it in steps. But the goal is the goal. Make sure your future involves on your terms to the best extent that it can, right? And make sure those that you're dependent on, should something happen, understand your thinking and priorities and intent so that they can help you, and that you can achieve to the best extent possible your objectives, and it's the lowest level of burden on them as they're dealing with the other side of that same set of issues.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Thank you so much, Mark. You've shared with us so many different ways to really approach aging in a way that can help a lot of us prepare. And I love the wants and the needs assessment in a way to kind of really help people start thinking about what do they really, really want and what do they really need, because sometimes it can be a little bit gray, So definitely your presentation was great, and I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from it. So how can people learn more about senior helpers?
Well, I will quickly share that information so that it's up on the screen. And let me do that. So the best way is to call or email the office, and you can reach us at any of these places. We have an office in Newton, an office in Norwell. You can go to our website. You can you can send us an email, and we'd be happy to provide more information or connect you to the experts we work with.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, as far as if people what if they lived in Massachusetts, but they decided to move to Florida and they need somebody like a senior helpers? Would they get with you, and do you
They can
connect
get in touch with me, and I can refer them to one of my colleagues. There are senior helpers owners all over the United States and Canada. So that, we can certainly connect them to resources, and, or at least tell them the process of connecting to resources in their area. We get calls like that all the time. We still have a lot of snowbirds. So we take care of them here, and my colleagues take care of them down there, and we exchange information, and it works well. And we've worked in collaboration with entities like that all the time. I think I'm the care advisor for my next door neighbors whose parents are in Florida. They're routinely asking questions, and I'm thrilled to help them, in there. And I can connect them to the expert for the resources in that area, in that zip code in many cases.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I just think it's so wonderful to have, organizations such as Senior Helpers to really help aging people like myself and my parents, really be able to kind of approach aging in a more positive way, in a more prepared way, So hopefully, from our time together, a lot more people will be more excited to start thinking about how they could navigate this.
This is a positive conversation, not a negative conversation.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And it's really an important conversation. Yeah, yeah. So, Mark, I want to thank you for being on the Aging Strong program again. And I'm hoping that you'll come back again because you're a wealth of knowledge. And I want to thank the Quincy Health Department for continuing to sponsor Aging Strong. Until next time, everybody, stay healthy and be well. Bye-bye.